Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile with a message for everyone paying big wireless way too much. Please, for the love of everything good in this world, stop. With Mint, you can get premium wireless for just $15 a month. Of course, if you enjoy overpaying, no judgments, but that's weird. Okay, one judgment. Anyway, give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
Who's a good dog? You are! Who's a good dog? You are! Who's a good dog? Who's a good dog? You are! You are!
The show today is going to be a little different. It's going to be a show about a dog. I'm taking this from an old road show I did years ago. It's the story of Moose. I decided to grab this tale, take it from the old podcast, the MISCHKE Road Show, and make it part of this new podcast, so all the people who never even heard of that road show could learn the story of Moose. Once upon a time, there was a dog named Moose. He was one of those dogs, like so many dogs, who endeared himself to a family. You know, the way dogs do that. They live such a few short years compared to the rest of us, but in that time, they attach themselves to people in a way that's really rather profound and a bit mysterious. They become almost larger than life a lot of the time, with outsized roles that seem to speak to some extraordinary power they have. I mean, you hear the stories time and time again. Oh, our dog, Boomer. Oh, boy, he was a legend. Everybody knew Boomer. Yeah, let me tell you, he was an amazing dog. Well, our dog, Daisy, was just the sweetest dog you ever could have come across. I mean, the best dog anyone could have ever hoped for. Let me tell you some Daisy stories. People change when they talk about their dogs. You can see it in their faces. They shift into some other mode. Probably because they're not just talking about an animal, but an animal they feel so connected to. And that's a whole different world. And that has to be talked about in a whole different way than when we talk about friends or siblings. Dogs can have a real hold over us, many of us, certain dogs. And this is the story of one such dog. We called him Moose in our family when I was growing up. We got him when I was 7 years old. And let me tell you something, folks, that is quite an age to be introduced to your first dog, because you are all in at 7 years of age. I mean, you have found the meaning of life. By the way, I don't know what kind of story you think I'm going to be telling here, but I should state right up front that it's not the story you're thinking I'm going to be telling. I can promise you that. Now let's go to that road show. I believe it started with me on a rainy November night in an automobile. I've known Sarah Oxton longer than I have known just about anybody in this world outside of my family. She was the neighbor girl when I was growing up who was my age. She was part of the gang, the Palace Avenue gang. The crew that ran wild in the alleys and on the boulevards, in each other's basements, or on each other's garage roofs. It was a fine neighborhood in which to grow up, and I loved all the kids that made up that world. I'm driving over to Sarah's house on a rainy November night. I've asked her to run out to my car when I pull up. I've told her I won't keep her long, but I want to ask her a few questions. I'm getting to the bottom of the Moose story. This is big. So if I bring up Moose to you and say, what are your memories of the Moose story? What do you say?
The first thing that I remember about Moose is that John won Moose in a contest, or there was some kind of, like, it wasn't like you went out as a family and said, we're going to get a dog. John brought Moose home, and it was either a gift or it was a prize or something like that. It wasn't like a family decision, but he became the family dog right away, and he was a puppy. He wasn't a full-grown Moose. That's what I remember the beginning of it was. He grew to be a big dog. I remember thinking that he was some kind of a collie. You know, he was a really big, kind of caramel-colored dog, and blended in terms of just being a communally owned pet that we all had access to, and was super friendly to us and everything like that. And there was a day when my mom said that my great-grandparents were getting older and were living out on the farm alone, and there was a certain element of concern about their safety, and that they needed to have protection, and that your family offered Moose as a take Moose to the farm, and Moose will protect your grandparents. And it was kind of this, wow, this is amazing. You know, this great dog that we've had here is now going there. It was sad, but it was also this sort of act of just kind of how we were as a neighborhood, you know, like Oxtons need help, and so here, you take our dog. He went to the farm. But then all of a sudden, Moose wasn't there anymore. Moose was gone. He got loose. And a certain amount of time passed, and then Moose was back in St. Paul on Palace Avenue. We just were so thrilled that there was this kind of heroic dog, and he, of course, of all dogs, would be the one that could travel the 300 miles from Jamestown, North Dakota, back to St. Paul and figure out how to get back to the place where he felt like he belonged. And he lived there until he died. I think that's honestly how I would tell the Moose story. That's what happened, and that's the way it was.
That's the way you'd tell the story? You wouldn't tell the astoundingly weird key element, which is you have access to secret information that the family does not?
I don't think I would.
Really?
I really don't think I would. Even with knowledge of what, you know, quote unquote, really happened. And yeah, it was, I remember vividly thinking MISCHKE's to the rescue.
That's not how it went. That's not the true story. Should I have my siblings tell it? I spoke with each of them individually, some in person, some on the phone. I told them I was doing a story on Moose and wanted to get their recollections of certain events. Here's John.
As a sophomore in high school, at the end of basketball season, Harvey Baran, the coach, had us all over to his house for a kind of a banquet. And his dog had had 4 puppies, and he passed out pieces of paper, and we had a drawing, and I won one of the puppies. Actually, I had a choice of the 4 in the litter, and I chose the biggest one, and that biggest one was named Moose by the family whose dog had had that puppy, because it was a big puppy. That was how I got Moose.
Okay, that's all true. That is how we got Moose. And stories that are all true are kind of rare, I believe. I think most stories are kind of true, especially stories being told 50 years after the events. Here's another story that's all true. Our family dog, Moose, did in fact leave us for a farm near Jamestown, North Dakota. But why? For that, let's turn once again to my siblings. Dale.
Yeah, well, it was just a succession of incidents. Was the first one where you took Moose for a walk and people were throwing snowballs at him? No, that wasn't the first time. There must have been some incident before that where he bit somebody. The second incident, I thought you had him on a leash and you were walking him in the neighborhood and some kids were teasing the dog, throwing snowballs at him and sticks, and he took off after them and dragged you for so many feet, and then he took off after him. And there was a kid in the neighborhood who was biking, and Moose got loose from his chain and took off after him, and the kid had to jump up on our car to get away from Moose. But I remember coming home for lunch one day, and Moose was chained up in the yard, and there was this old lady walking by the house carrying a package, and Moose just started barking, and he pulling at his chain, and he broke the chain, and he jumped up on the lady. That was the scariest thing, and it was maybe after that Mom and Dad decided that this isn't going to work.
Jerry.
We let Moose run around the neighborhood. We didn't like chaining up the dog. We didn't have a fence. We let him just run around the neighborhood. We didn't think anything of it. And then you'd find, we'd hear that Moose bit somebody. He was biting people, and he chased after a biker and knocked him off his bike. He's always running after motorcycles or bikes. And then this whole thing about keeping your dog chained when he's outside became a deal. I was trying to get Moose in from the backyard, from the chain, just to bring him inside, and he got away, and that was one of the times that he attacked somebody, a biker, I think, on that particular occasion.
Kind of a menace.
He was sort of a menace. He was the nicest dog, but yeah, a bit of a menace.
Lori.
Mom was constantly dealing with, he did it again. He bit somebody bicycling down the street, and the police were summoned, and we were finally needing to get a muzzle to put over his mouth, but it was obviously a problem.
Mike.
Oh, the cops came to our house so many times. Moose was, he hated bicyclists, motorcyclists, and postal delivery people. He'd bite them all. He'd go after bicyclists and motorcyclists especially. And he didn't like postal workers either. And the cops would come. I answered the door many times with a cop at the door saying that we had to get rid of Moose.
Why do you think Mom and Dad, after he bit somebody, didn't just keep him chained up?
They did, and he would break loose all the time.
And then that's when the Oxtons came in with the idea of taking him to the farm. We could take him to the farm, and then they wouldn't kill him. I mean, it was either that or put the dog down.
And we thought, oh, that's perfect. He can go up there. He'll be out in the country. He doesn't have to be on a leash. He won't be biting anymore. He'll be happy. Hard as it was to give him away, that seemed like the best solution for Moose.
Paul.
On a certain morning, I was the only one home, and it was kind of mid-morning. It was so sad. I was down in the basement in my room, and I had to put a leash on Moose and lead him out the door for the Oxtons. Sad occasion, that's for sure.
So unlike Sarah's story, it wasn't the MISCHKEs to the rescue, it was the Oxtons to the rescue. If they don't take Moose and give him a new life on a North Dakota farm, the police follow through, take the dog away, have him put down. But there's more to this story, so much more. 2 weeks after Moose arrived on that farm, he ran away. We got word from the Oxtons that it was a rather short-lived affair there on the farm in Jamestown. Our dog didn't seem to like it that much on the farm, and he took off running. And here's where the story really gets cooking. More after this break. A few years ago, a 59-year-old fella was in a Walmart trying to reach for a watermelon when he tripped over a pallet that had been carelessly left on the floor. He injured himself. Now, had that pallet been there just briefly, and had he not been able to verify its careless placement, he might not have had a case. But store cameras ended up revealing that multiple people tripped over that pallet that day. It was left there for a long time, and our 59-year-old consequently was awarded, get ready for this, $7 million. $7 million. Carelessness resulting in injury is very often grounds to sue. Bradshaw and Bryant are considered the best personal injury attorneys in the state of Minnesota, even by their peers. Remember Bradshaw and Bryant, when someone is careless with you, find them at minnesotapersonalinjury.com. EcoFun Motorsports is the premier electric bicycle dealer in this part of the country. They carry Bentelli e-bikes, Wildside e-bikes, KHS e-bikes, and Yamaha Power Assist bikes. Head out to Forest Lake and take in the game-changing world of e-bikes at EcoFun Motorsports. Unlike the silly Segway, e-bikes really have revolutionized getting around. They've become wildly popular, and for good reason. You get outside, you get exercise, and you can relax and let the bike do the work for you when you want it to. Until you see and try an e-bike at EcoFun Motorsports, you don't know the fun you're missing. Educate yourself. Get out there. It's a wonderful world of wheels in a variety of incarnations at EcoFun Motorsports. I love just hanging out there and looking at everything they offer. Learn more at ecofunmotorsports.com. Back to my brother John.
I was talking with a friend at Lee's Kitchen where I worked, Tom Rademacher, talking about moose. By then I knew that moose had run away from the farm. And I told him 2 weeks after Moose got to the farm, he ran away and hasn't been seen since. And Tom said, wouldn't it be cool if Moose came back? Sometime after that, Tom Rademacher died. And it wasn't long after that I was walking with my friend Joe Delaney down at the St. Paul Seminary along the Mississippi River. And we saw a dog, and Joe remarked, boy, that dog has interesting markings. And I looked at it and I said, I used to have a dog with very, very similar markings to that one. And I said, Moose. And then he came. I said, Joe, I think this is my dog. And I knew it was Moose. I said, this is unbelievable. Moose was getting excited and I was excited. And I just went, I'm going to take this dog home. So I said, thanks for the good time, Joe. And I just went home with Moose. I always thought that my friend Tom Rademacher put me and Moose together. The young man who died and whose funeral I went to, I just thought, I wonder if he had anything to do with that chance meeting down at the river.
That was just the most unbelievable news. I came in the door and somebody said, Moose is back.
This is Moose. He's back with us.
He immediately went under Dad's desk and laid down. And that's what he always did.
I just thought it was a miracle that he came back.
It was very exciting to realize that we could have him back and enjoy the dog that had to leave as part of the family again.
I believed in magic when I was a kid, and something magical had happened. A dog that had meant the world to me, more to me than pretty much anything in life, had come back. It had been so devastating to give Moose up. You see, that dog was some kind of extraordinary creature to me. My favorite feature of this animal was the way it would smile when I would call it. You may or may not know about this phenomenon, but when I was a little kid, I had never heard of dogs smiling. Dog experts know about this. It's an appeasement gesture, they say. They call it the submissive grin. It's to show you that this dog is no threat to you. It's a way to show deference. And it was so wonderfully endearing. The moose smile was his signature. Anyway, I guess Mom and Dad just had to let us keep him. Any dog willing to make the trek from that far away, showing that level of dedication to a family, could not be turned away. But what truly made it magical was that the biting habit disappeared. All those miles had apparently drained that biting habit from him. All those people he must have needed along the way, he must have had to rely on his trip home, had perhaps caused him to change his behavior. To make it that far, he would have needed people. He would not have been looking to scare them away. Nevertheless, we didn't want to broadcast the news that this dog was back. We were worried that the police might come back and catch us with our old dog, make us give him up again. We certainly weren't going to the newspapers with this great story. No, it was enough just within our family to know that we had our moose back. We had our moose back. All was right with the world.
Major Eric Knight wrote many fine stories. But his greatest story was Lassie Come Home. Lassie is the story of a dog and a boy. The boy's family was poor. So poor they had to sell Lassie, and she was shipped hundreds of miles away. But Lassie never forgot the boy, her home, her people. Then one day she ran away. She was going home. Nothing could stop her. Twice she found refuge. Each time someone loved her. But a greater love urged her on. Did Lassie get home? Did she find the boy?
The farthest distance that a lost dog has traveled, finding its way home, occurred back in 1979 when Jimpa, a Labrador boxer mix, turned up at his old home after walking some 2,000 miles across Australia. That's according to the Guinness World Book of Records. In America, Bobby the Wonder Dog covered about the same distance on his own, returning to Silverton, Oregon, after he was lost while his owners were visiting family in Wolcott, Indiana. Bobby returned mangy, dirty, scrawny, with his toenails worn down to nothing, but he made it back. When Mark Wessel had to move a few years ago from Winchester, Virginia to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, he learned too late that his new home did not allow dogs. He decided that, at least temporarily, he would leave his dog with his father. But a couple weeks after he moved, Mark's dog, Bucky, ran away. And 9 months later, he made it to Myrtle Beach, traveling 500 miles. With Moose, the trip took a year and a half. How is any of this possible? It's well known that dogs have an extraordinary sense of smell, and it's also been well researched that they have a keen ability to remember and to follow landmarks. But what allows them to travel these vast distances is something else. What scientists studying dogs have learned is that dogs have an innate ability to detect the Earth's magnetic field and use that for navigation. Scientists now know that dogs utilize the Earth's magnetic field and even bright stars like the North Star as a compass. Now, in our family, we never spent much time wondering how Moose did it. When my neighbor Sarah said earlier, if any dog was going to pull this off, it was going to be Moose, that was more or less how we felt as well. Moose was special. We believed that. It just made sense to us that his world was not going to be run by others' agendas, but by his own. That trip back home solidified his stature as something extraordinary, and we bonded with him like never before. He became a larger-than-life figure in our family, and there were years of adventures with him, times when he almost drowned falling through the ice on the Mississippi, adventures with my brothers when they were building log cabins in a remote region of Canada, where he survived having a log fall on his neck, breaking several vertebrae. He would survive getting hit by a car on Palace Avenue as well. And he would join my parents, my siblings, and I on a canoe trip over several days in a part of Canada that we could only access with a float plane. As a kid, one night, I remember gaining my first understanding of love by staring at Moose. He was asleep at the foot of my bed, and looking at him, I found myself pondering what my parents felt when they said words like, "I love you." I thought about the feeling I had for Moose then and there, and suddenly realized that must be more or less how my mom and dad feel about me. I was momentarily stunned by this realization. I felt, for the first time, that I understood love. Next summer will mark the 40th anniversary of Moose's death. I remember it like it was a week ago. One summer day, when he was 13 years old, Moose laid down and let it be known he was not going to be getting back up again. It was time. A couple of days passed. He began to whimper slightly, and we knew it was the end. We made the decision not to wait through another night. My brothers and sisters and I found a vet in the country near our lake cabin who agreed to come out his back door, out to our van, at 11 p.m. and administer a shot. Moose passed peacefully. We drove back home to the cabin in silence. In the pouring rain, at midnight, with flashlights guiding our shovel, we dug a hole and buried him beneath a beautiful tree near a farm field where Moose loved to leap the barbed wire and herd cows back to the barn, angering a very frustrated farmer who would claim the cows would be too traumatized to give milk the following day, costing him money. Moose's story had come to an end. The final chapter was both sad and beautiful. We still own that property today, and we know where Moose is. Or do we? What prompted me to make Moose the subject of this roadshow was a recent conversation I had with my old neighbor, Sarah. I had her over to my St. Paul home for a visit, and we were sitting together reliving memories of the old neighborhood. It was wonderful. And then, in the midst of talking and laughing, an old and long-forgotten memory suddenly appeared in my mind, one I had not thought about in decades, hadn't even remembered since childhood. In my memory, I'm teasing Sarah's younger brother, Barry, on a lazy summer afternoon. Barry was getting agitated and then frustrated, but I wouldn't let up. Eventually, he got quite angry, and he turned to me and blurted out something utterly unrelated to the moment, but something he knew would send a dagger in my direction. "Well, guess what?" Barry had said. "That dog of yours isn't even Moose. Moose was hit by a car and killed at the farm in North Dakota." My memory of this had more to it. It had Barry's mother suddenly calling him into the house, sounding upset. But the most powerful part of the memory had me, reeling a bit from what Barry had just told me, racing up to the storm door leading into the Oxton's house, which sat cracked open slightly, and eavesdropping as Barry's mother scolded him in their kitchen, saying, "What purpose is it going to serve, telling that family what happened to their dog? How is that going to do them any good? Let them have their story. There's nothing to be gained from telling them what really happened to Moose." In my memory, I ran from that door traumatized, overwhelmed, telling myself I could not have heard what I just heard, utterly unable to process the information, nor to understand what I should do next. And then, in my memory, nothing. I have no memories about this incident after that. It is as though I somehow buried that information somewhere so deep it could never resurface. But now here I was, a 60-year-old man, sitting across from my old neighbor. And I said slowly, "Sarah, that memory of mine, is that true? Was Moose hit by a car and killed at the farm in North Dakota?" Sarah quietly said just one word: "Yes." I'm no psychologist, but I think back on the burden of that information on a young boy, the second from the youngest in a family of 8 kids. The information I would have carried with me away from the Oxton's house, that, if divulged, could send my brothers and sisters into a kind of tailspin. It would dismantle our family's greatest story. It all would come tumbling down like a house of cards. And more than that, I was being told of the death, the violent death, of my best friend, Moose, the animal who had taught me what love is. It couldn't be true. It just couldn't be true. My brothers knew better than the Oxtons. They had the real story, the one that a world is supposed to give a kid, the one that made life magical, that righted every wrong. As a kid, I must have felt I had no choice. If it was a matter of choosing between walking 2 doors down into that house of ours and detonating a bomb, or telling myself what had just happened had not actually happened, nor could ever happen, well, the best direction to go was obvious. My fragile psyche decided to bury that thing. Bury it deep. According to psychiatrists, repressed memory occurs when trauma is too severe to be kept in conscious memory, and is removed by repression or dissociation or both. At some later time it may be recalled, often under innocuous circumstances, where it can suddenly appear in conscious memory. Is that what happened here? I don't know. I do know that throughout the rest of my childhood and all of my adulthood, I told the story of our dog traveling from Jamestown, North Dakota, to St. Paul, Minnesota, to rejoin his family. And I told it without remembering that scene in the backyard of the Oxtons. But I will say this, more so than my brothers and sisters, in my adulthood, I routinely compared photographs of the moose taken away to Jamestown, North Dakota, and the moose we got back. And I was always troubled by what I saw. Was some part of me remembering that experience from my childhood? Was some part of me gnawing away, wanting me to get to the bottom of this once and for all? Again, I don't know. What I suddenly did know, talking to Sarah, was that there was no hiding it anymore. The truth was out. Moose had never come home. And unlike when I buried that as a child, as an adult, it was time to tell my brothers and sister. And I did so, one at a time.
What? I can't believe that. I really can't.
What? Holy cow. Are you serious? My God. Wow. Oh, God. That's just an incredible story. I'm glad they didn't tell us. That would have been devastating.
No. No. You're kidding.
I'm not.
That's pretty intense. It's just so funny to think about how many times I've told that story. You're not just messing with me. So I've told this story to I don't know how many people, and it's just a fable. Sure, 375 miles from Jamestown, North Dakota. It took him a year and a half, but he made it. Homing device, yeah, You gotta be kidding me. What the heck? Well, by golly, that is amazing that they kept that from us all these years.
No. Are you kidding? Oh my God. Oh my God. Wow. Oh my gosh. We got a bonus dog that we don't know where it came from.
Oh, God. Whoa. Wow. Yeah, wow. Well, there it is.
You call these big investment advisor operations like Merrill Lynch or Charles Schwab, and do you think you meet Charles or Merrill? Are they around? Can they talk on the phone? With investment consultant Josh Arnold, he's the man answering the phone. He's the man talking to you. He's the one with over 40 years' experience, helping you manage your retirement savings, helping you understand your Roth IRA, your 401k. It's a smaller, more intimate, more one-on-one kind of investment advisor operation that may be far more in your comfort zone. Find out for free. Josh is offering you a 48-minute consultation for nothing. You can't beat that. 952-925-5608. Rewind, get it again, write it down, call him, tell him I sent you.
Investment services offered by Josh Arnold Investment Consultant, LLC, a security and investment advisor. Past performance is no guarantee of future results. All investments involve risk. Tommy MISCHKE is a paid endorser.
When they toured the Welshire of Bloomington and Medina, they were blown away by what they saw. It wasn't just the caring staff and the fact that the Welshire is a memory care facility with the highest level of professional care in the state. It was the amenities. After all, they were going to be visiting their loved ones at this memory care facility time and time again. And they saw what they could enjoy with their family member. Courtyards, balconies, nature. Inside the facility, a cinema, an ice cream parlor, a chapel, a barber shop, a beauty salon, an exercise room, a wellness center, communal gardens. It was the state-of-the-art facility for memory care in this part of the country, and they were sold, and you will be sold when you tour the Welshire of Bloomington and Medina for your kin needing a memory care facility. Don't go anywhere else without checking out the Welshire first.
That presents a mystery. So who is that dog, and why did that dog have identical markings, and why did that dog come in the side door and immediately go under Dad's desk?
I mean, we must have had old photos that we compared right away, and I guess I thought they looked enough alike. He certainly acted similar, had some of the same mannerisms. Remember the smiling and...
But he didn't do the smiling when he came back. That's what he did before.
Oh, he never did that after he came back?
No, that always bothered me. I try to put myself in the Oxtons' shoes. 2 weeks after their grandparents rescue our dog from being put down, he's dead. What's easier to say? The rescue plan failed, or Moose got loose and ran away? What would be easier on 8 kids 2 doors away? Even Barry and Sarah were told Moose got loose at first. They had loved that dog as well. They were only told the truth by their parents when their neighbors to the west suddenly proclaimed that Moose was back. That's when their mom and dad leveled with them. That's not Moose, kiddos. Moose died in Jamestown a 1.5 years ago. We hadn't wanted to tell you back then, but that's what happened. That dog of the MISCHKE's, that's some other stray. But what did the Oxtons tell my parents? Did my mom and dad know from the beginning that Moose was killed in Jamestown? They wouldn't have wanted to tell us either. I'm sure it would have crushed us. What would have been the point of telling us? I called Barry Oxton, and he told me that he's pretty darn sure my parents knew the whole story and kept it a secret for half a century. My mom lived to be 98. She only died a few years ago. Once she decided to keep it a secret, she probably couldn't go back on that. I understand.
That's what we were told as well. And by we, I mean me and my brother, that he got loose. But he would have always been loose. So what I know is he lived on a farm. They weren't in the town, they were on a farm, but right next to I-94. In fact, the original location of their house was where 94 was built, and they had to move their house. So they were right by the freeway. I imagine that he slept outside and was certainly never on a leash. But I don't know if he got hit by a car on the freeway or on the frontage road, but Moose got hit. But it wasn't until Moose came back that my mom said, no, that's not Moose. Moose was hit by a car in Jamestown. He never made it. I guess why we kept it as an Oxton story has to do with just I guess, Tommy, the feeling that I have is this idea that as kids, you want to believe that we were awesome, our life was awesome, the neighborhood was awesome, and that there was this dog who recognized that and did everything in his power to get back to it. And maybe during that time there were, great long-distance journey stories and rescue stories and things that populate what you watch on TV, and that sort of fed like, hey, we have a story just like that too, and here's Moose, here's proof. I didn't ever want to tell you There was no way I was going to do that. It was, it was a better story, honestly, that I was happy to be part of.
Yeah.
It really was. You had this sort of break in the action that, okay, so it lasted a year and a half, but then you had Moose until I think I was 18 or 19 years old. Maybe my parents went to your parents and said, hey, we have bad news, and they just kept a lid on it and figured that was going to be the end of it.
I'm pretty sure that that's the way it went down. That was communicated. And knowing your mom, that makes total sense. She loved you guys. I mean, she was the ultimate caretaker, and she wanted you kids to have the best memories, and that would have been a terrible memory. And this is a good memory and a good story. And that just totally fits with your mom. Not even to just protect you kids, but to have this cool story and to have the dog back and the joy of that and not ruining that part of it. And it worked out for everybody.
That's Barry Oxton. I hadn't spoken to him in 40 years. It was strange, after all this time, going back with him to that old forgotten memory. When he had told me Moose never came back. He died in North Dakota.
I think it was, we were trying to water some trees or something, and you guys kept sneaking over and turning off the hose. And I'd be trying to do this watering of this trees or plants or something, and you would come over and shut the water off. And then I caught you one time, and then we got into that argument. It was one of those things where obviously, little kid trying to be spiteful, I'm going to get you, I'm going to tell you what really happened, That's kind of my recollection. I would have had enough information in my head that I would have used it. And that's when it sprang out of me when we got into that argument. Like, okay, now I know some information and I've been hiding this inside of me. Back then, you were told not to do something. You typically didn't do it, but you just kind of carried the story along with you and were afraid of reprisal. I do remember, hey, that was dumb. That's nothing that we should be passing along. Just keep that in our family. I'm just like, I'm in deep doo-doo here because I shouldn't have said that. To have this cool story, to have the dog back and the joy of that, ruining that, Moose is dead and this is just some stand-in imposter now. You know what I mean? It's just, and I've had enough of you people. I'm going to tell you something hurtful here. Inside information, unfiltered. I was at the end of my wits with you.
I don't blame Barry for any of this. Let's be clear about that. Number one, he was a little kid. Number two, if the roles were reversed, I probably would have done the same thing. And number three, all he did was tell me the truth. What's wrong with the truth? I prefer knowing it as I sit here today, though not everyone in my family would say the same. My brother Mike, for instance, he's loath to give up the Moose legend. It was our great family story, after all. And I think sometimes family identity is built from great family stories. It becomes part of who we are.
To me, it just is incomprehensible. It's mythology in the family that I guess I will not discard the magic of it. I'll probably take the myth to my grave. I just prefer to live the fantasy that he made it all the way back. It was such a cool story.
At this point, many of you may be wondering, well, just how much did this second dog look like the first one? And the answer to that depends on how much you want them to look alike. If your heart is wishing for it to be the same dog, if you're longing for this all to be real, it looks very much like the same dog. If you take a detached approach and simply compare the pictures the way they'd be compared, say in some legal proceeding, the two dogs are clearly different in appearance. This is a story of what the eyes see when the heart yearns. The story we told ourselves when we were kids was that Moose returned with a thick winter coat. No, the pictures didn't quite line up perfectly with him in that state, but we told ourselves, come spring, when he lost that thick coat, he would more resemble our old dog. Well, that spring, I don't remember anyone dragging out the old pictures again to be certain this was the same animal. Everyone was so happy. Mom and Dad were on board. All was as it should be, as it was meant to be. Who would ever take it upon themselves to destroy such a wonderful narrative? The story had power, I tell you. It was powerful enough to win over my skeptical sister, who, from the very beginning, was the only family member who didn't believe it. She was 6th of 8, and I'm sure her voice was too often drowned out by 6 boys, 4 of them older. But she knew. Over the years, she told the Moose story fewer times than any of us. In fact, she hardly told it at all. It never felt quite right. As with my other siblings, I interviewed her separately before a second session that included the big reveal, the news from Sarah that our dog never made it home. And here's what Lori said in that first interview when I asked her to tell me the Moose story.
John was convinced this is Moose. He's back with us. And I was skeptical because I always remembered the puppy Moose had a white marking between his eyes, and I didn't see that on this dog. So I was skeptical, but eventually I just thought, you know what? Maybe this really is him coming all the way back. I finally decided I want to believe that this really is him, and I can put that aside, my doubt, because I was just thrilled that John was 100% sure, and I thought, well, let's go with it. Mom especially was like accepting that we're going to have him back, and this is fine. I don't remember Dad much. He was at work a lot, so I don't remember his take on it.
And this is from the first session with John, when I just asked him to tell me the Moose story. The session before the second one where I passed along what Sarah had revealed.
I remember Laura saying, "Nah, it's not Moose." And I just said, "You guys, this is Moose, and you'll see, he'll lose that fur." And we took out some pictures and matched the markings. And it also seemed like a very old dog. And Moose was only 2 years old, so maybe 2.5-year-old dog. But I said, if he's been on the run for 1.5 years, he's probably a little bit tired. And I think we had Moose for another 10 years. Obviously wasn't an old dog.
Do you have any recollection of Mom and Dad's reaction to your reaction?
I think they were amused, and I think they thought, well, I think my sheer enthusiasm was very persuasive.
Barry Oxton said it best, I think. It worked out for everybody. The Oxtons lived out their days never having to talk about the failure of the Great Moose Rescue Plan. My brothers and sisters and I, as kids, never had to grieve and mourn the death of our beloved dog. And we ended up with a new dog that all of us would agree was as fine a pet as anyone could have ever hoped for, and possibly far better than the dog we gave up. And my mom and dad, through sheer luck, got a free dog for their kids that didn't give them endless headaches and that made their children feel like the world was a magical, wondrous place. When we were all kids, Mom and Dad had to watch as we all learned, one by one, that there wasn't a Santa Claus. Well, they never had to watch us learn there was no second act for Moose. And learning the truth now, well, what does it really matter? So there is no Santa Claus. When asked to tell the moose story in the future, my brother Mike says he's going to continue to go with the legend. But, amazingly, so will Sarah. She told me that if asked to tell the story today to strangers, she would still go with the legend of moose. She says it's true in its own way, separate from the facts. I'm reminded of the film The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance. If the facts don't line up with the legend, print the legend. For me, though, the story has actually gotten much better. Ultimately, it's a story about the power of dogs in the lives of families and the power of the human heart to get what it wants in this world, however it has to get it. Spectacle Shop would like to remind you of something. They work with prescriptions. Prescriptions are serious things. They come courtesy of a doctor. Some prescriptions can get quite complicated. You want your optical store to be extremely careful and extremely qualified with prescriptions. There are many ways to get them wrong. There is only one way to get it right. Spectacle Shop is sent many a complicated prescription by other optical stores who aren't up for that level of skillful precision. Well, if they're sending their tough work to Spectacle Shop, why wouldn't you just go with Spectacle Shop to begin with? They clearly are being acknowledged as the best when it comes to making your lenses. There are 4 Twin Cities locations. Go to one of them. You won't be sorry. Learn more at spectacleshop.com. American Pressure. People send me emails routinely saying, "MISCHKE, this American Pressure thing, it baffles me. What's the deal with them?" Well, you clearly don't work in a field where industrial pressure washers are needed. You'd probably use a pressure washer to have a hose fight with your kid, and you'd probably kill him. American Pressure sells and repairs pressure washers for people cleaning heavy equipment and machinery, people in industries like construction or agriculture, people who use pressure washers all the time on the job. The food industry, for instance. My Lord, cleanliness and hygiene are paramount, and pressure washers are the best thing going for cleaning in those situations. Cleaning large agricultural machines? That's a time-consuming task. A pressure washer, though, can make it easy and quick. Meatpacking plants use them, metal fabrication operations. I could go on. And the kings of the pressure washer world are the guys who've been around the longest. For repair, for parts, and for selling the pressure washers themselves. American Pressure, you go anywhere else, you're making a colossal blunder. But they don't offer anything for your backyard hose fight with your kids, so quit asking me about that. Go to AmericanPressure.com. Well, I want to thank you folks for indulging me in the retelling of the moose story. It was originally offered as one of the 180 episodes of the MISCHKE Roadshow, the podcast I did for 11 years before being hired here at Hubbard Broadcasting. Those 180 podcasts still exist online. The MISCHKE Roadshow was a very different podcast, and one that I experimented with after voluntarily leaving radio behind back in August of 2013 when I walked away from WCCO, feeling like I needed a change. The Roadshow was indeed a change. It served me well. And now this podcast with Hubbard is a change that also feels necessary and reinvigorating. The reason I picked the moose story to retell out of the many different options is solely because of how often listeners wrote me about that particular show. I just tended to hear about it far more often than I did any other program of mine, so I thought it was worth bringing to this new podcast. And I hope you agree. In closing, let me pass along the email for the show. MISCHKE@hubbardradio.com. And also, I'll pass along the texting and calling number for the program, 651-321-8949. 651-321-8949. Here's to wonderful dogs everywhere and the families who love them. Thanks for listening. I'll talk to you again next time.